End of quote. So that's what Kofi Annan himself wrote in the report. So the only people who tried to defend the territory and the people inside were approximately several hundred volunteers. The army inside Srebrenica in such a shape as an army, regular army, did not exist. It was several hundred volunteers with some kind of improvised weaponry. So on 9 July that was the situation. The airplanes did not come. Although they were supposed to come, it would really now take me maybe half an hour to explain why the UN, the Dutch and the other international factors say that the airplanes did not come to bomb the Bosnian Serbs. That would be another long elaboration, and I really don't have time for that. However, the jets did not take off from Aviano, from the NATO base in Italy. It would probably have taken them 15-20 minutes maximum to fly to Srebrenica, and the only thing those jets, those NATO jets were supposed to do was to drop several bombs and destroy several Bosnian Serb tanks, which were ahead of the column of the Bosnian Serb infantry. The Serb infantry could have been stopped by the defenders of Srebrenica, but it was actually the tanks which created the problem. So basically the only support that the people of Srebrenica needed was someone to come and destroy the Serb tanks, and that's what did not happen. And so there was a desperate move when people of Srebrenica realized that the UN was not going to do anything. No jets were coming from Italy to bomb the Serbs, and the Dutch were only withdrawing all the time. The territory was being taken by the Serbs. On 9 July, a plan was created to launch a counterattack on the Serb forces. The counterattack was launched very early in the morning of 10 July, and this counterattack actually succeeded. It was launched in 3 different parallel directions, and the Serbs withdrew for a moment. Serbs also lost some soldiers there. I mean, in my book I give statements of some of the witnesses, fighters who were there. However, what happened was that the local defenders of Srebrenica ran out of ammunition, number one. Number two, the gap which was created. You see, there was a gap which was created by the counterattack against the Serbs, and the Dutch, who were at that time in the center of the town instead of being somewhere in the area, did not use this opportunity, which they were definitely supposed to use, to move their armored vehicles. They had 30 armored vehicles in the enclave. They were deployed around on those observation posts marked by these letters. They were supposed to take some of those armored personnel carriers, maybe only 2 or 3, because there was a very narrow road, and the only direction through which the Serbs could reach the town was this narrow road with 2 lanes, normal Bosnian asphalt road with 2 lanes. And on the sides of the road there were steep slopes, so that there was no other way for the Serbs to enter the town except by this road. So the Dutch were supposed to take the APCs, simply park them on the road, and prevent physically the Serb advance towards the town, but they did not do it. So basically this counterattack succeeded, but then it failed later during the day, because the Serbs reorganized and came back even closer to the town on 10 July. So that was basically the area where most of these fighting took place, and this area will be shown in the next image in 3D. This is a kind of 3D image where you can see now from the other direction. Now south is on top of the picture, and north is on the bottom of the picture. Here you can see Srebrenica. This is not the whole town. There's another part of the town which is down somewhere in this area, but most of the town actually is shown on the picture, the greatest part of the town. The town is quite narrow and long, and the only direction which the Serbs had to use to enter Srebrenica was this road here. That was the only road that they could use to drive inside Srebrenica, and that's exactly the road they used to drive to Srebrenica. On 11 July they drove in along this route. So again, to make my point about NATO aircraft, the starting position of the Serbs was somewhere like this here. So they reached this area on the 5th day of the attack. And here there are, again, you can see probably now, steep slopes on both sides of the hill. They were completely exposed to any NATO aircraft, but no NATO aircraft showed up on the sky over Srebrenica. So the defenders of Srebrenica created their last defense line, which was here, and this dotted line shows the last defense position of the Srebrenica defenders. Population at that time moved from those villages already. They moved to the town, and then population abandoned this street here and this street and moved down towards Potocari. You will see later. And the number 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, I mean, I saw it with my own eyes on 10 July because I was there. These were the positions of the 5 Dutch battalion armored vehicles. They were actually in the center of the town, and that's where they were sitting the whole day on 10 July, instead of trying maybe to go up the hill and at least by their mere presence to try to prevent the Serbs from coming down. So on 11 July the Serbs finally entered the town. This is basically the main direction through which they entered the town. Mladic himself came on this road to Srebrenica, and at that moment, sometime in the afternoon, between 2 and 3 o'clock, the population of Srebrenica split in 2 big groups. One group was mostly men and boys, very, very few women, and probably no children at all. Probably also, well, when I say children, I mean no young children, but there were actually children. There were boys who were teenage boys who joined their fathers, their brothers later in this, what is now called March of Death. They were killed. The column of these men and boys here trying to reach this Bunim area where they gathered in the night of 11 July and decided to break through the Serb positions here and walk towards Tuzla territory, which was about 70, 80 kilometers long trip through the Serb positions. This column, according also to the tribunal in The Hague, to their documentation, there was between 12 and 15,000 people in the column. One part of the column was armed. It was those people who were trying to defend the town. Now they moved in front of the column, and their task was to break the way through the Serb territory, which was of course very difficult. And the rest of the column was all unarmed people. So between 12 and 15,000 people. Here on the right side you have these 2 arrows showing the other column, which was mainly women and young children, but also men and boys. Later I found out, when I counted the names of the men and boys who are missing from Potocari, because they are all missing. After they came to Potocari, they were all taken by Serbs. The number of men and teenage boys, and very old men actually, all of the men who came to Potocari, among the women and children, the number of them was about 2,000. So half of the column disappeared, were killed, either by shelling directly, by direct Serb fire, or later they were captured, taken to execution sites and executed. According to some assessments, half of this column was killed, and 2,000 men and boys who came to Potocari were all killed. So that makes the number of about 8,000+ people who were actually killed in July 95. So now the next image shows, now I'm going to